The Lindley Street Haunting in Bridgeport, Connecticut, some say is one of the most notorious paranormal events in history. But how much of this is fact and how much is fiction? Believers so overwhelmingly insist that this haunting or poltergeist activity really happened. But how do we know what evidence supports or even contradicts these claims? One of the most compelling aspects of the Lindley Street haunting is the sheer volume of reported witnesses. However, there is a lack of concrete evidence, and the proof comes in the form of hearsay and anecdotal accounts. And haven't we been here before? Lots of witnesses to cases usually involving a poltergeist and a young girl with nothing really concrete to back it up. So I ask, are these things truly happening? Or are hauntings like these just a figment of the imagination gone wild? Well, to start as always, I will work through the story as best as it is known. Then after, we'll apply a healthy dose of skepticism and analyze the facts. Lastly, this is a Warren's case, even partially, so I will have a section where we'll dive deeper into the Warrens' role in this haunting and their motives as well. And then for the very end, I have a special guest, Stevi from Truth or Demons podcast, who's going to join me for an interview to talk about Lindley Street and the little Joey story that some of you may or may not have heard about. It's a story that needs to be properly discussed because it has been debunked, and we need to just put it to bed and stop talking about it. When I added Lindley Street to my list of topics I want to cover, I think I added it in like November, end of October. I honestly didn't think there would be a whole lot of information for me to make a full hour video on because there was no movie or book written by the Warrens. But between the controversy in the last couple of months and also just me discovering Stevi and the amount of research and digging that she's done, I've got almost too much information. Now, normally, I actually kind of have a perfect amount of information for a 1 hour video that we would normally have. But because we need to discuss little Joey a little bit and the debunk of little Joey, and also I have an interview with Stevi that will be at the end of this video. So this video is going to be a little long, but normally you guys like long videos, but I'm just giving you guys a warning ahead of time, like to explain. It's like an hour of our normal video. And then the rest is talking about little Joey and the interview with Stevi. As well, I'm going to add an excerpt from one of Stevi's episodes on Lindley Street. And the issue that she's talking about here is the little Joey story when it came out. Essentially, it began an uptick again of people trespassing and visiting the home, which is currently occupied by people that have nothing to do with the family that is in this story. And they tried to get in contact with Joe to get him to take down his post or at least work out some kind of arrangement so they would stop getting so many trespassers. And Stevi goes into it in more detail here. I'm going to play you a copy of the message because I also want to put the same warning on my video to please don't visit this house. It's not haunted and it's not currently occupied by anyone from the family in this story.
Due to the drama surrounding Joe pretending to be a part of this story, the current owners of the house on Lindley Street have allowed me to make a statement on their behalf. Joe posted a text message claiming it to be from the home's current owners, and instead of actually acknowledging what the message said, he just took to social media with it and posted it to TikTok. I saw it and immediately sought them out to see if they sent the message and if they were aware Joe had made it public, because this is what it said. This is a text from the current owner's girlfriend. Quote, "Hello, my boyfriend owns 966 Lindley Street, and I live here with him. We completely understand the intrigue of the house and all the stories. However, we have had a surge of visitors and scary letters from people who view stuff online about the house. We noticed an increase when new videos come out on TikTok, YouTube. I know how hard you work on your videos, and we truly enjoy the content. However, it is getting scary for our safety here. My boyfriend's grandma owned the house since the 90s and never knew about the story, and his cousins grew up here too, and when his grandma passed, he was able to buy the house back. More than willing to chat about the house in private if you'd like. I have my own theory about it all. LOL. I truly hate to ever get in the way of people's hobby or work, and especially if social media is an income for them. However, we would appreciate it if we could talk about possibly removing the posts for our own safety currently. Please let us know. Thanks." End quote. Joe posted this and proceeded to encourage people to share the story, a blatantly opposite and disrespectful response to that text. So I did ask permission to read this, and it is on a public TikTok page called History's Paranormal. I am told it was shared there publicly without their knowledge or permission. The message clearly states they would prefer the videos and TikToks be taken down as they're experiencing trespassing on their property, where they live and call home. This is 100% not okay on anyone's part. On the social medias posting with the knowledge of this message, and especially on Joe, who is trying his damnedest to monetize this farce of a story, and now at the expense of its current owners, it seems. So, on behalf of the current owners, people who are indeed still living in this home, please do not bother, visit, disrespect, or harass this house or the people living inside. They have asked me to please let everyone know that there is currently nothing paranormal going on in the house, and absolutely no demons. Regardless of what happened there in the 70s, they live there now and would appreciate their privacy and property being honored and respected. Please do not contact them, trespass, or perpetuate falsehoods about their home. It is not currently haunted. There is currently no paranormal activity at 966 Lindley Street.
All right, let's get into the story. The story of Lindley Street. Our story begins in 1960 when Gerard Gooden, a factory worker at Harvey Hubble Incorporated, bought a small 738 square foot bungalow on Lindley Street in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He and his wife Laura had just become parents, though their joy was tempered by the challenges of raising a child with cerebral palsy. Tragically, their son, Gerard Jr., passed away in the fall of 1967 at the young age of 6. Some accounts say that he was 7. Less than a year later, the Goodens adopted a 4-year-old Canadian girl named Marcia. Marcia was of Indigenous descent from a First Nations community in Canada. Specifically, people have said that she came from the Seneca people, who are part of the Iroquois Confederacy, which is made up of about 6 First Nation communities. The history of how this alliance of First Nations is very fascinating, and I suggest you read more about it as well. A lot of times you'll hear it referred to as the 5 Nations as well. I think there was a sixth nation added later. It was reported that Marcia's birth family had issues. Some people said with substances, some people said it's more family interpersonal issues. But normally a child in Marcia's position would be kept within their community and the elders would have ensured she was taken care of. But unfortunately, all this stuff was happening during the 60s scoop, which was the large-scale removal or scooping of Indigenous children from their homes, communities, and families of birth through the 1960s, and it lasted into the 80s. Considering the brief bit of info we have on what Marcia did as she got older, I would hazard a guess that she was a victim of the scoop. Now we fast forward to 1974, which is about 5 years after they brought Marcia home. Strange occurrences began to happen. But actually, supposedly Laura later reported that small things were happening immediately when they brought Marcia home, but 5 years in is when things really exploded into the story we've all heard about 966 Lindley Street. By this point, Marcia was about 10. Note, some people say Marcia was 9, and some say 10, and some say 11, so you may have heard some differing ages here as well. According to William J. Hall's book, The World's Most Haunted House, The True Story of Bridgeport Poltergeist on Lindley Street. The book says that the family kept hearing strange rhythmic knocking every night. Gerard had a couple suspicions as to what might be causing it. There was a proposal to build condominiums next to their home, a project he had been vocally opposing. Some people have mentioned that the developer may have wanted the land, and if you look at photos now, you can actually see the condos and how close they are to the home. So Gerard had his suspicions that the developers were deliberately creating disturbances to force residents to sell, or even to get revenge on anyone who spoke up about the project. So when he called emergency services, he had hoped the police would catch any vandals. After the emergency services arrived, the fire department inspected the foundation of the bungalow, and officials also checked the gas lines and plumbing, yet no source for the eerie sound was ever found. The police were said to have set up watching the home for 24-hour shifts, but they also found no vandals either. The most baffling aspect was that the noises seemed to emanate from inside the house itself. Officials examined the basement piping and the ductwork, and the Goodens went as far as replacing their old furnace, but the sound still persisted. Then, during the last weekend of November 1974, events took a very dramatic turn and soon caught worldwide attention. Now, before all this, Marcia had been enduring relentless bullying at school due to her heritage. Remember, this is the 60s and 70s, and racism was still a problem that kids got away with back then. In October, an incident occurred where a classmate kicked her in the back that led to Marcia having to wear a back brace. Some reports of this story say that Marcia was in a full body cast, but I don't know where that started from. It seems that it was just a back brace. But because of this incident, the Goodins decided to pull her from school and homeschool her instead. Laura was pretty much a helicopter parent. After losing her first child, she was paranoid about losing Marcia too. So you can imagine this would be pretty tough day to day for Marcia now. Marcia's only friend was a neighbor girl, Anne Marie, and her not being in school meant she was living a very insulated life with her mother constantly over her shoulder. Now, it was November 21st when things really ramped up. The Goodins had been having dinner with a neighbor friend when they heard a sudden crash that interrupted their meal. A lower pane of the master bedroom window shattered from the inside. The following day, as the family watched television in the living room, strange sounds emerged from the master bedroom. They discovered that the curtains on a closed window had inexplicably fallen to the floor. After attempting to reset the curtains, it just happened again. So they just kind of gave up and left them on the floor out of frustration. Then the curtains appeared in the kitchen 30 minutes later, out of nowhere. Adding to the growing sense of unease, a knocking sound, starting softly, then rapidly intensifying, filled the house for several minutes before just stopping out of nowhere. The following evening, upon returning from a day trip to visit their relatives in Dover, New York, Gerard encountered more unsettling phenomena. He found Marcia's television inexplicably left on her bed, the screen facing downward. In the kitchen, items seemed to have a mind of their own. Dishes lifting from the sink and were flung across the room. The knife block detached itself from the wall, and the kitchen table had flipped over, scattering groceries everywhere. Even more bizarre, the refrigerator began to slide and ascend, hovering about 6 inches above the ground, while a 23-inch television near the sink fell and injured Laura by striking her foot. But then, just as suddenly, things would stop, just like the night before. That is until after dinner, when Gerard sensed an unseen presence in the kitchen. Then suddenly, towels and toiletries began to fly about in the bathroom that Marcia was using at the time. Despite these unnerving occurrences, the family managed to get to bed around 3 a.m., although they did not sleep soundly that night. The day after, on November 24th, the family awoke and Gerard went into the kitchen to make breakfast, only to discover that the kitchen table had been flipped over again, despite no noise being heard during the night. He also found that the refrigerator was inexplicably blocking the door leading outside. When he went to inform Laura, a crucifix along with a picture of Jesus ripped from the wall and crashed to the floor. Shortly thereafter, another crucifix, this one hanging above Marcia's bedroom door, fell and shattered. Meanwhile, in the living room, chairs began to rock back and forth, even as the rest of the room remained motionless. Feeling increasingly unsafe, the Goodins stepped outside and flagged down the teenage daughter of John Holsworth, a local police officer who lived across the street. He asked her to go fetch her father for help. Within minutes, Officer Holsworth arrived. Gerard yelled out for help, declaring that something evil was tearing the home apart. Entering the house, Officer Holsworth found the interior in disarray, as if it had been ransacked. In the living room, he witnessed the television rotate by 35 degrees, recliners trembling, and the refrigerator sliding silently across the floor without leaving any trace. Unable to find a logical explanation, Holsworth later admitted that he felt he was witnessing something supernatural and immediately called for backup. Soon, 2 additional patrol cars arrived. 4 officers went inside, immediately seeing the fridge floating about 6 inches above the floor without a sound. Throughout the chaos, Marcia sat in the living room watching cartoons, displaying no sign of fear or hysteria. This led some to wonder whether she had grown accustomed to the chaos or was she responsible for it. However, disturbances were occurring in one part of the house while the family and officers were in another part, so they couldn't explain how Marcia would be able to do it from another room. As the situation escalated, a team of 10 firefighters arrived in 3 separate units, accompanied by the firehouse chaplain. The very tiny home quickly became cramped with emergency personnel and onlookers, while chaos reigned. Chairs moved, dishes rattled, and shelves shook violently. A neighbor, Mary Pascarella, who was the director of the Psychic Research Institute in Hamden, Connecticut, suggested that it could be a poltergeist phenomenon, a theory that sometimes children can unconsciously serve as conduits for such activity. Acting on this suspicion, Mary called Ed and Lorraine Warren, whom she was personal friends with. Ed arrived first to assess things. He described the scene as he walked in, saying the home looked like it was ransacked as if someone went through it with a baseball bat. He quickly called Lorraine to come with Father Charbonneau, who at the time was a 21-year-old seminary student. Lorraine described the scene as they came upon it, saying the house was surrounded by police and fire vehicles like it was some kind of crime scene. Lorraine said there was already a crowd of probably like 200 people standing outside. Witnesses in the family told Ed and Lorraine about multiple events: TVs falling over, the fridge levitating, clocks falling off the wall, a crucifix blown up into bits, furniture moving around. The Warrens themselves claimed to have witnessed a recliner in the living room moving, with Marcia seated in it. It began to lift and then abruptly flipped in midair, dropping Marcia to the floor. Amongst other things, they also said they witnessed. I won't go into every detail of instances of activity. You can check out the book, or even some of the other YouTube videos as well have detailed accounts of everything. The tape library has a video that has a bunch of detailed accounts, but they all generally say the same thing. By 4 a.m., reporters from New Haven and New York had descended upon the scene, and the story of 966 Lindley Street was soon broadcast nationwide by the Associated Press. What many didn't realize right away is that the Warrens had called the press in. Because of the attention from the press that the Warrens brought in, it actually caused the crowd to swell to 2,000 people. And it was people not from the area. So the Warrens caused a lot of chaos by calling the press and calling all these people. Things began to erupt into chaos as the crowd demanded answers from the police. Some were even tossing garlic at the home. Later on as well, a couple of people tried to actually set the home on fire too, but the police apprehended them. As the investigation by the Warrens progressed, Lorraine reported being very nauseous, especially upon entering Marcia's room. And suddenly a burn showed up on her left hand, and that resulted in a blister. Several people inside the house noted a strange sulfur smell emanating from Marcia's room, though no one could explain its origins. Convinced that the disturbances were the result of poltergeist activity channeled through Marcia, the Warrens decided that an exorcism was warranted. Now, the book describes an incident that happened after the Warrens arrived. The witnesses described it as such. The air in the cramped home grew oppressively heavy before an unseen force revealed itself. This force, resembling a large, cohesive mass of smoky, yellowish-white mist, split into 4 distinct entities. One of these entities allegedly picked up Marcia and hurled her, prompting everyone in the house to flee onto the front lawn. The Warrens say that they stayed there for 2 days straight, but other reports say that they came and went a few times over. Either way, on the 3rd morning, as the Warrens woke up and were at their home getting ready to head back to, get the exorcism set up, they instead heard on the news that the whole thing was declared a hoax. They said that it was all Marcia's doing and that she was a ventriloquist. A police officer later claimed that during questioning, Marcia confessed to causing many of the disturbances, such as banging on the walls and the floors and pushing a TV with her feet. Also, she said that she knocked over crucifixes, threw pictures, and even made the cat Sam talk, which we'll come back to that cat. But several witnesses to the events found it hard to believe that a 10-year-old girl could have orchestrated such a wide range of phenomena. The writer of the book has said that he spoke with 100 witnesses. I'm just editing, and I think it's that he went through 100 witness statements because he had tapes and statements and things like that were given to him. I believe there's only 15 witnesses that remained living that he spoke to directly of all these events to write the book as well. So he's saying there's 100 people that have similar instances. Police Superintendent Joseph A. Walsh, however, made the announcement that the incidents have been officially classified as a hoax and the case had been closed, adding that Marcia would be referred to psychiatric evaluation and insisting that all events had a rational explanation. He said that the witnesses had simply fallen victim to the power of suggestion. Marcia apparently did go into psychiatric treatment after, and they found no issues. The Goodins denied any involvement in a hoax, arguing that their 10-year-old daughter, who had suffered an injury just a month earlier, could not have possibly moved heavy furniture or caused objects to fly about on their own. They maintained that labeling the disturbances as a hoax was merely an attempt to quell public hysteria and disperse the crowds. Even after the case was officially closed, onlookers continued to flock to 966 Lindley Street, hoping to catch another glimpse of something supernatural. Police patrols around the house persisted into December until the crowds finally dissipated. The Goodins could not escape the notoriety, though. Their home was vandalized with egging, broken windows, and even slashed tires. In a bid to put the haunting behind them, the Goodins listed the house on sale in January of that next year, because it was November when everything went down, so January, and they listed it for $21,500. When the bungalow failed to sell after a year on the market, Gerard repainted it white and removed the distinctive swan planters from the front. In the end, the house never sold. Gerard and Laura remained on Lindley Street for the rest of their life. They never spoke of the events that had unfolded in the mid-1970s. They were still residing in the house in 1987, even after the condominiums that Gerard had opposed were eventually built. Laura passed away in a car accident in 1993 at the age of 68, and Gerard died of natural causes 4 years later at 78. Marcia was not mentioned in either of their obituaries, which brings us back to whether she was a victim of the scoop. People say she left home as a teen and she went to Canada to go find her real family. It is said that she has a brother in Canada, so she likely did find them, and I can only assume that she confirmed she was a victim of the scoop, and that's why she stopped talking to the Goodins. Marcia passed away in 2015 of natural causes. Also, just note, people try to make it out that her death was mysterious because she was only 51 when she passed, but it turns out Marcia, she had medical issues. She had MS and epilepsy. It's very likely she died of complications of this. The majority of those with MS die of complications because MS has other comorbidities that can lead to damage to the body. So it's not that mysterious. The police records. Another interesting thing about this case is that there are police records where they pretty much say like it's a haunting. So I'm going to read you one of the reports and a small follow-up one that was addended to it. All right, so City of Bridgeport police records, and this was recorded November 25th, 1974. It says to Captain Charles Baker from Patrolman George F. Wilson Jr. in reference to strange occurrences at 966 Lindley Street. Sir, I was on patrol in 823 and went over to cover G35 on an unknown call at 966 Lindley Street. Upon my arrival, we found that the inside of the house looked as though someone had completely ransacked it. We were then advised by the people that the strange things were happening. Furniture moving, things falling from the walls, etc. At this time, I entered the kitchen and saw the refrigerator actually leave the floor approximately 6 to 8 inches and move towards me a couple of feet. I then went into the living room and saw a chair bouncing around. I, at this time, attributed these strange things to something natural, such as gas or termites. So I called the radio room to send some inspectors from the fire department to come check out the house. The fire department arrived, checked the house, and stated there was nothing wrong with the house that they could find, and then they left. I was in and out of the house all day for different reasons and spent approximately 4 hours total inside the house. During this time, I observed several strange things happen. Of these were the following. I saw a large TV slowly make a 90-degree turn away from us and face a wall. A bureau bounced on the floor a couple of times. A crucifix nailed to the wall vibrated and pulled itself off the wall. A picture on the wall fell and nearly struck my partner, Patrolman Leroy Lawson. 3 different reclining chairs bounced around, changing positions in the room, and a large clock on a shelf in the kitchen fell to the floor. All of the preceding is what I actually saw inside 966 Lindley Street. Respectfully submitted, Patrolman George F. Wilson Jr. Now, an additional report is from the officer who was with him. So this one says from Patrolman Leroy Lawson, subject haunted house. Sir, while on patrol in car 823, my partner and I went to 966 Lindley Street to cover G35. Upon entering the house, I saw a picture fall off the wall, a small desk move, and a clock on the kitchen wall fall. I immediately left the house and waited outside for my partner, and he signs it off with respectfully submitted Patrolman Leroy Lawson. Skeptical analysis. Okay, let's dive into analyzing some of the issues I feel like need to be discussed and brought up about this case. There might be other issues and there might be answers to my questions as well that come up later after this video. Feel free to comment below as well anything that you have an issue with this case or any answers you might have. I have found in researching this that I keep getting different answers from different people on some things, and sometimes something will be answered by someone and then it gets unanswered by someone else's facts. So it's a little confusing with this one. The book. I do respect the work of history and investigation that William J. Hall has put into his book. I respect it much more than any Warren's novel, which was always written as horror entertainment before a factual account. Hall did do a lot of legwork with his book. But I also do question how much blind faith he has in witness testimony of paranormal events. Okay, so I've re-recorded this section a few times because I get new information. And I was talking to Stevi about William Hall, and I also emailed him and was speaking with him. And I'm sort of in the middle when it comes to this author. I'm just going to read you a snippet of a review that I found. Me on a personal level, where you all know I don't believe in psychic mediums and these people are just like making stuff up. This here kind of makes me question how much was he really debunking psychics in his career. I don't think he was as in it as the rest of the psychic debunkers out there because anyway, let me read you this first. And this is in discussion of the book called The Haunted House Diaries. All right. And I'm just going to quote it here. There's two sections. First one. Author William J. Hall, a performing magician and paranormal investigator, begins by cautioning us to be aware of our preconceived beliefs regarding the paranormal. How we interpret things is dependent on our life context and our own belief systems. Yet Hall himself offers some potentially controversial beliefs from his own perspective as given for us. All right, then I'm going to skip to another section here. We are then offered opinions on select elements of the hauntings in Philly's Diary by two experts in the field, Paul Eno and Shane Sirios. If you have not heard of them before reading this book, you're not given much of a background introduction to their work here. Eno is known for his radio show, Behind the Paranormal, and Sirios is the founder of TrueGhost.com. According to Hall, Sirios' near-death experience made him sensitive to otherworldly things, and he has a 100% success rate on resolving paranormal problems, parasites, etc. without using religion. The investigation section of this story covers a scant 16 pages and is mostly impressions of things that Sirios senses in and around the home. End quote. All right, first of all, I apologize if I said any pronunciation of names incorrectly. So I did speak with him and, I was asking him if he might consider himself a skeptical believer. He didn't really answer the question, but I think he is. I think he's a skeptical believer because he did tell me that Shane is the real deal. Now, again, he does open his book with your belief system. All this stuff is based on your belief system. And you all know my belief system when it comes to this stuff. I've just seen a lot of fakers and a lot of charlatan psychics in my life. I grew up on the circuit. So if someone says they speak to the dead, I'm just never going to believe them. And saying you had a near-death experience is, I've seen so many frauds and fakers say crap like that just to sell their story. And some of them did. Some of them actually did have proof that they died on the table or whatever and then came back. But they just used that to further their grift that they were doing. I'm not saying that Sirios is doing this. I try to look into him a little bit, and it's stuff from years back. He doesn't seem to be super relevant nowadays, at least from what I found. But I guess my whole point with this is Hall does seem to be a believer, and we have to remember that with him writing the book. I would consider myself not super skeptical in a lot of ways, but very skeptical in other ways. I'm overly skeptical of psychics and witness testimony. And perhaps this is where the disconnect for me is with Hall. I feel like once you've debunked psychics and once you've been a skeptic about psychics, it's hard to not see the issue with all the psychics that come across. And to just have this person and say that they have a 100% success rate, that's a pretty bold statement. And that makes me question some things. He is an excellent researcher, though. just like how Stevi is such an excellent researcher. Like they're both on the same level of the amount of effort that they put into trying to find information. And I do commend someone for doing that. And that's way more than most people do when they're writing true stories about ghosts and the paranormal. So I do appreciate that he does that. And there are things that he talks about, like I'm a skeptical believer and there are things I believe in. And there are things he talks about that I actually do agree with. He talks about things like the multiverse and stuff. And I agree with multiverse stuff. I do find it fascinating and it's something I'd love to explore some more. But I guess what we'll say is that I'll just agree to disagree on his point about trusting psychics, any psychic or medium really specifically. But on top of that, just in my personal opinion, and looking at everything from his book, he seems to rely on anecdotal evidence. Like this whole case is anecdotal evidence. This whole case is witness testimonies. And he even talks about in his interview with Stevi that some witnesses would say something different, but the larger amount said this. So there was like, I'm just making up numbers. There was like 5 that said something different than the 12 or the 15 people over here. But you see, that difference is the issue with witness testimony. You can't take either of them as, truth or gospel because they're clearly misremembering. And this is just a normal thing. Like a witness testimony is groggy, is iffy. So I don't know. I don't know if Hall became a pure believer after his work on Lindley Street. It's very possible. I know he says he's like Houdini where he wants to believe. But I do think that Houdini was way more skeptical than what I'm seeing here. Houdini didn't believe in any psychic whatsoever. And he pulled things apart quite a lot more. Anyway, my point is with the book, just remember that the author who wrote it, he does believe in more than it seems. And also, he tends to accept witness testimony, anecdotal testimony quite a lot. In his other books, I've seen reviews as well. It's a lot of witness testimony and anecdotal things. And while some people in the industry and some people who consume this stuff and some people who are skeptical believers, well, some of them are I'll agree that witness testimony is great. And if there's so many witnesses, it must be true. That's just not me. I don't agree with it because psychology is a tricky mistress and she messes with our head. And that's why we have things like mass hysteria and misremembering. And even people could have been hallucinating for all we know. This stuff can even be brought on by one another and peer pressure subconsciously without us realizing it. Anyway, that's my thought regarding the book. I would say it's really good research. It's really nice to see all that stuff, but you decide on how you feel about witness testimony because there were some witness testimonies that did refute or was different than the stuff that people decided to focus on. And those few that were different or anyone that refuted it were ignored in the story. Not by Hall, just over history of Lindley Street. So just remember that. Also, I forgot to add for anyone curious, I did speak with Susan, who then put out a call to like the magicians and debunkers and stuff that she knows. And they weren't familiar with this guy as a debunker. And one fellow said that he's been working in the Connecticut area for all this time and he's never really heard of him. But, when I asked the author, Bill, about his experience debunking, he told me the committee that he was on, so I have the information. I did confirm that it is a real society. So Society of American Magicians, and he was sitting on the Psychic Investigation Committee. Now, he did tell me that he did more private debunking of psychics than working officially on the committee, which is probably why no one's really heard of him. You guys know how hard these debunkers work nowadays. Maybe he did this a long time ago, and I don't know what to say. The call out that Susan did to her people, they have very strong opinions on how much he's debunking stuff. But that being said, he is more of a believer, and even Susan's not a believer at all. Most of the people that she works with are not believers in anything. Whereas I do believe in some stuff, right? So I'm kind of in the middle, and I feel like Bill is also in here in the middle with us too. The family. So the condos were a concern of theirs, and apparently Gerard had faced issues with work too. The story was that they may have had a bit of a setback and they were struggling financially. So I'd like to understand their finances a bit better because they did live in such a tiny home, but they had a lot of fancy things like 3 TVs. That's really expensive back then. And they had smaller ones that didn't require, like, they weren't 500 pounds. So those were really expensive. So they had the money to move into a bigger place if they could afford these TVs at one point. So why didn't they? Or if they're so broke, where did they get 3 TVs from? Or were there even 3 TVs? The 3 TV thing, it seems weird. It seems odd that they had that many TVs back then. They're very expensive. I think that there's maybe some more information to their finances and their living situation than we understand. And could Marcia have faked it? Maybe. I honestly think the stories are over the top fabricated. Like the TVs that they talk about, them being countertop ones. So they aren't heavy. She could have moved it. I think there's a lot of misremembering of things that happened and over exaggeration of things that happened. And perhaps there was something else going on that wasn't really supernatural and they just blew it out of proportion. Condo Development. All right, I fully admit I don't have the time nor really know where to start to find out what year these condos were built. More specifically, I wonder, when did they begin to break ground? If you take a look at the pictures, which I'll put some of them up on the screen, at the time of the haunting, you can see there's a house beside them. But if you look nowadays, you can see where the condos are, and they're sort of set back. And it looks like where their neighbor's house is the parking lot. So it makes me wonder, were they already digging already? Every country, state, city, etc. has different laws and bylaws. Like in my city, they have to dig up the ground and do environmental studies what would be in the foundation of new buildings before they can get approval for the plans. So was there any open ground dug up there? I only ask because maybe there was gas leaks or something else going on in the area. Maybe it was getting inside the house. And when they tested the house lines, they were fine, but maybe there was something happening in the hole in their backyard. Also, could there have been vandals hired by the condo owners or developers? Maybe. The condo developer never bought his home though when he did put it up for sale, which was only in January. It was only like a couple months later. So that could mean any of the following. They priced their house too high. I don't know if he was trying to maybe get a deal out of people or weasel them out of their home cheap. The condo development could have already been approved and was in progress, which could explain any issues from gas leaks and so forth. Or the developer never wanted the land, but he could still be angry at Gerard for causing a stir when he was opposing the development. I do think there might be something more to this condo development, and maybe that might explain this haunting. Psychology. Most people say when there's so many witnesses, how could it not be true? But we often forget that psychology is a tricky mistress. Mass hysteria is a well-documented thing, along with things like mass psychogenic illness, subconscious bias of peers, and peer pressure, etc., etc. People want to believe, and because they want to believe so badly, they often will get caught up in each other's fantasies and over-exaggeration. I know in all my videos I do bring up psychology, and I do have a video coming out soon, probably next week, regarding psychology some more as well. But I just want to make it clear that people often forget how powerful our mind is, and they often are ready to just discount it could be a psychological issue. You don't have to be crazy or you don't have to have a mental illness to be caught up in a moment like this. It doesn't mean that anyone is ill, and it doesn't mean that they have any lasting effects. It just means that it's just human nature. We get caught up in these things. It happens, So again, it's the same thing I'm always harping on. I think in all of our ghost videos, I always mention that we need to remember psychology. And witness accounts and witness testimonies, you got to take them with a grain of salt because they're highly affected by the psyche. Mary Pascarella. Okay, as I was doing a bit of research trying to find pictures of Mary Pascarella, I actually stumbled across who she was in relation to the Warrens. So I want to talk about her right before the Warrens section. So Mary Pascarella Downey was a psychic medium who ran a school in New England called Psychical Research Institute in the 1950s and 60s. Apparently, supposedly, Mary trained the Warrens. Ed and Lorraine Warren came to Mary Downey because they wanted to learn more on the supernatural. Mary also worked with law enforcement solving cold cases, supposedly. The Warrens would actually end up inviting Mary to investigate 112 Ocean Avenue, so that's the Amityville Horror House. Mary apparently arrived there and did a walkthrough, and she didn't really have anything hit until I think it was the second floor is what they're saying here, and that's where the activity began. She said that she seen the spirit of a young girl who was trapped, and Mary had to eventually lay down. Mary apparently was very private with her work, and she never really talked about this case. After Amityville, Mary stepped out of the paranormal field and would eventually move to Florida. I find this story interesting, and this is a write-up someone did on Facebook. So, it's on the Amityville Horror House page. It's probably researched, but, take it with a grain of salt. I just find this very interesting because don't the Warrens kind of try to sell Amityville as if, Lorraine had that vision? And isn't there a picture where Lorraine's lying down in a bed? I wonder if that's the Amityville house that they did that for a photo op. Okay, no, she's in the bed. It says this is the home of Miss Wendy Evans of Gladsville. I'll put the photo up on the screen so you guys know what I'm talking about. But I wonder if she's copying Mary. I find this very interesting because there's a lot of stories that say Lorraine was never psychic and she learned how to be psychic by getting trained. And that was after Ed and her started getting some cases. But before that, she was all against this stuff. I find it very intriguing, and I find it very interesting that she's the one that called the Warrens in on the Lindley Street one. And she just happened to be a neighbor of Lindley Street as well. Could they have gotten the idea from this person? Could Marcia have gotten the idea from this person to do this haunting? The Warrens. Okay, so in my opinion, there's few issues that go on with the Warrens. First, we have the cat story. It was actually figured out that it was started by an officer as a joke. Apparently, the officer said to Marcia, feeling bad for her, everything going on. He's like, hey, go around the corner and say something. I'll tell these guys that the cat's talking to me, right? It was just supposed to be a joke or a fun little thing in a tense situation. So him and Marcia were doing this thing with the cat and it got taken way out of context. I don't know where along the line it happened, but it started as a rumor. Suddenly this cat was talking. And then Ed came forward and said that a poltergeist took control of his voice box. And then he said something about a materialization voice box. Well, cat's voice boxes literally can't do the consonants and words of human speech. So it's just not a thing that happened. But I know the newspapers even published it. And I think they got it from Ed, to be honest. It was just a joke and just a fun little thing that the officer was doing with Marcia. So if the cat thing got taken so out of context, what other things were taken out of context as well? Next point I want to talk about is Father Charbonneau, who they brought with them. Apparently he was a bit of a crackpot. He was always known to go around talking about how prevalent the paranormal is in everything. As well, he would do interviews for the Inquirer. And for those who are too young to remember or know, the Inquirer was it was like The Onion, but it was a magazine or a newspaper. So I don't know. Them associating with people like this just makes me call into question the validity of their statements and also just the quality of their statements as well. This isn't the first time I've started to question some of the priests and fathers they're working with, and I'm maintaining a list and I'm looking into them all because I think there's something there to be said of who they associated with from the church. The next point I want to talk about the Warrens is the Warrens called in the chaos. There wasn't thousands of people until the Warrens made those phone calls. If they truly wanted to help this family, if the real reason they got kicked out was because of the crowds, then they shouldn't have made those phone calls. I'm just editing here and I just realized I may not have put that in the story, that the Warrens did get kicked out. When they arrived back on scene, there's different stories. I think I go over the list in a second here. It's either they arrived on scene and the police told them to go away, or the family fired them and kicked them out. But those are the two stories that go around. Those phone calls made everything get way out of control, but they wanted their limelight, as always. Also, there's different stories as to why the Warrens left. There was some stories of them fired for faking evidence. Marcy said she witnessed Lorraine running her finger under hot water to burn it. As well, apparently people heard Ed coaching Marcia on what to do. And then the other story is that police turned them away because of the chaos. They weren't fired by the family, but police kicked them out. As well, I feel like Ed started making up some stories to make them look better in the eyes of people who are going to look into the story later. And in response to him interfering and in response to them being fired too. Let me just go over a few examples of some things that I think there might be issues with these stories. Now, let's circle back to these accusations that Ed had coached Marcia. So these accusations came up. So Ed said that in response, I think this is the story I think he came up with to explain it. He said that he had lifesavers in his pocket and he ate one. And he saw Marcia like kind of begging for one. He's like, oh, what am I going to do? Deny a kid candy. So he gave her a lifesaver. But then apparently he said that the chief of police told Marcia's family that these lifesavers were some sort of magic candy where he could mind control her and then also make things happen in their house 20 some odd miles away. This is the story that Ed tells. So often people who lie a lot and people who are good liars will slip a bit of truth in with their lies. And the rumor is that a police officer saw Ed coaching Marcia, told the family, and the family fired him for that. So in this lie, well, I think it's a lie, he's saying that the police chief saw him give her candy and then convinced the family that the candy was magical. I don't really believe this story. I think this is a way for him to say, oh yeah, they said that I was coaching her, but it was really this lifesaver thing. I think he just came up with something ridiculous to refute it. Also, just a quick editing note, because I do realize I'm explaining this Ed and this lifesaver story to you, and it is conjecture and it is witness testimony. But Ed telling this lifesaver story is on a copy of Seekers of the Supernatural, the show that Tony has put up on YouTube. There's a copy of Ed saying that from back in the day on TV. And I just find the lifesaver story so utterly ridiculous. When I heard the story of the rumor of a cop telling the parents that they heard and saw Ed coaching Marcia, this makes me think the lifesaver story was created to refute that one. That's where my thought process is coming from, for those of you that don't know. I didn't put the whole clip of Ed and the lifesaver thing in here because I just don't want to put too many clips of the Warren stuff in here. Another issue with the Warrens as well is the long distance phone bill. The family actually hired a lawyer for this reason, and also they were trying to see what they could do to fix their daughter's reputation because people were really picking on her at this point now. So him calling in all these papers and all the press, it costs a lot of money and they weren't paying it back. So they actually had to sue to get the phone bill paid for by the Warrens. For anyone who's too young, these were long distance calls that they made in 1974. It was extremely expensive. There was no nationwide calling. So the Warrens like to say that they weren't fired by the family, that they were kicked out. And there's people that they have tell stories like, oh, they were begging the Warrens to come back and help them. And they were so thankful for the Warrens to be there and everything like that. And I don't know if I'm really buying this. If they were so thankful for the Warrens and wanted their help and begged them to come back, why did they have to sue them for the phone bill? Also, if the Warrens wanted their story to turn it into a book like they usually do, shouldn't that relationship have been there? Reciprocal even. Sign the contract and we'll pay the phone money back, because they did talk about that case during their lectures, but they didn't have the rights to do anything with the book or anything with it. So I'm just not really buying it. I think that the family did kick the Warrens out, and I think the family did fire them. I think that Lorraine did fake this stuff. Quick editing note again, apologize. There's so much misinformation in this case. It's all over the place. I forgot to mention that there was a rumor that Lorraine burnt her own finger by running it under hot water, and Marcia witnessed it and told the police officers and her parents that Lorraine burned her own finger. For whatever, they got caught faking or coaching or whatever it may be. And I think they actually were kicked out by the family. I just think that there's some tall tales being told here. As well, I think that caught Lorraine in some lies. Lorraine says in the interview on their show there that the Goodens had another son and gave him away. And I don't know, the way that it's worded, it sounds like she's saying that they gave him away and then took Marcia instead. And I asked Stevi about this, and she said that apparently there was a neighbor or something who said there was a rumor that Laura had a child from a first marriage long ago. But like, that wouldn't really, like, why would Lorraine bring it up in this weird way, in this weird manner? I feel like she's saying it in a strange way that is trying to make it sound like it was from Gerard's, like, son. It's very iffy the way that she's talking about their business, their personal business like this. I'm going to put the clip in as well of what Lorraine says here, and you can decide what you think about it.
They had a son, Gerald and Laura. Laura had a natural son that was born with Down syndrome. He died, that little boy died. Then they had another boy, and they put him up for adoption, but they adopted this little girl. Nobody ever knows and was never answers for that. There is always reasons behind poltergeist phenomena, Tony.
Yeah, the way that's worded, it sounds like she's saying they had another son like Gerard and Laura. And like they adopted Marcia, it was, I think, less than a year after their son died, which even if she was pregnant, right? It's 9 months of pregnancy. I don't know. I feel like that to me is a lie, or at least like not understanding their life and taking a rumor and then making it quite public incorrectly. And that's a problem. On top of everything, I always find that the Warrens do tell like over fantasy, like fantastical versions of what have happened at haunted locations. And I feel like the more intense versions of these stories and these accounts actually came from the Warrens, and people just kind of roll with it. I don't know. Let me just end here with asking, how much did the Warrens affect the real story of Lindley Street? And how many lies do we have to catch someone in before we begin to question everything they say?
When they fight dirty, you better fight dirty. Sometimes we have to do something wrong so that good comes from it. What do I mean by that? I mean exactly that. I mean that sometimes things that may seem wrong are not really wrong. And that's not a cop-out.
Little Joey. Okay, I'm going to cover this in my video. I do talk about it in the video before this, but that's less about Lindley Street and more about the issues that have been going on lately with some people. But I'm going to talk about Little Joey because there are still some videos and things up that pretty much say that he existed. You can go watch Stevi's reaction video to the original story that Joe was trying to sell about Little Joey. But for a quick rundown, essentially he said he was born, his mother was 13 years old, and his father was in the Navy. Stevi found his parents, and his mom was 17, not 13, and his dad doesn't have any record of being in the Navy. Then he said that his mother was neglectful, and essentially Marcia's mother took him upon herself because she felt bad for him or something, and then he started living at the house. And all the stories he tells, he talks about Marcia being like really evil and like picking on him and throwing things at him and making sure TVs fell on his foot. Like just the weirdest stories that he just completely trash talks Marcia, and he doesn't even know who this girl was. So he said that he was in the house at 7 years old. His siblings were born in Bridgeport, so he probably was born in Bridgeport, but it appears that he lived in many other states besides Connecticut. Like is Connecticut a state? Sorry, Canadian here. Anyway, point is, he lived in other states outside of this area for his whole life from what Stevi found. So he probably wasn't in Bridgeport for very long. Little Joey has been debunked. Stevi from Truth or Demons podcast proved that there was no little Joey there. There was 100 witnesses, and there was all that witness testimony. And even though I don't really take it very accurately, none of them talked about a little Joey or a little boy that was living at that house. Someone would have said that, and that would have been part of the story. his story is just over the top. He was not there. On top of that, let's not give him any attention, as we all know the things that he did in his life, and he doesn't really deserve to get famous off of a fake story. So I'm just mentioning it here as yet another reminder that the story of him has been debunked as well. He is proven to be a very not good person, and he should not be around conventions. He should not be around children, all right? And he should not be around families, and he's dangerous. And that's it. Truth or demons? Okay, I did interview Stevi for this episode, so I'm going to put it here, and you guys can check out the interview with her, and we kind of delve into some stuff and have some fun kind of talking about ideas of what else the issue could be, if it was a haunting or if it was something else. Stevi and I do discuss Lindley Street in the beginning, but we also have a little bit of fun just discussing the Warrens and ghosts and hauntings and things like that as well. I'm just going to put the whole interview in because I think it's kind of a fun discussion. But if it's too long for anyone, that's totally fine. You can skip past it once you get bored. Do you want to start off first with like introducing yourself to the audience?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Stevi, and I am the host of Truth or Demons podcast, which is dedicated to a deep dive into the lives and cases of Ed and Lorraine Warren, but it has also led me down many deep dives involving NESPR, the New England Society for Psychic Research, and anyone involved.
The main thing I wanted to do, because I want to do a video, I'm working on a video for Lindley Street. When I told people that I was working on the video, commenters were telling me to look into the little Joey thing and that they wanted me to cover it. And that's essentially your thing. So so that's like the main thing that I want to talk to you about today. And then we'll see how much time we have left after. I'm familiar with like the Lindley Street story and everything, but what kind of, I guess, well, to explain to our viewers, I'll probably do a little summary anyway. With little Joey, this guy was essentially saying that he was there and witnessed the whole thing as a child, but he was just lying. And he was just trying to get another Conjuring movie made. I saw his TikTok where he was begging the director to make another movie with him in it, or,
Yep.
About him, sorry. And Tony Spera was all, gung-ho, thinking this would be his, money bag.
Oh, yeah.
And
All over it.
Turned out not to be. And the main reason it fell apart was because of the work that Stevi did. So, tell me what got you first interested in this guy. What kind of got your your skin crawling of I'm gonna look into this because something seems off.
Yeah, for sure. It was interesting how it all went down. So NESPR, the New England Society for Psychic Research, they started a podcast, and it was mainly in retaliation to what I was doing. I was told by people that they told them specifically that it was because they were mad at me, which I thought was funny.
Really?
But
that was before Joey that they were mad at you?
Yeah.
Or?
But Frank's wife, Terry, she and I have become pretty close, and she helps me out a lot, and she actually watched it. And she got to, when they put their third episode out, she noticed that they were saying they had a new player in the Lindley Street story. And Terry and Frank, being from Connecticut and knowing that stuff and all about it, she immediately came to me and she's like, "You got to watch this. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who this new player could be." So we watch it and we find out about Joe. And immediately Tony is saying there are going to be name changes in this story to protect those involved. Yet the only name change was Joe's. He was going by Joe King. And it was on the video, and his little name was on the video and stuff. And people pointed out that it looked it looked funny because it said J-O and then King. So it looked like it spelled joking. So a lot of people were making comments about, this guy's got to be kidding, right? This is a joke. But he claimed to have been present for Lindley Street. And as I'm watching, I'm getting really upset. Not because I think he's lying, but because he is bashing Marcia, who is the main child in the story. She was adopted by the Goodens. Once she was adopted, the Goodens started experiencing these things in their home, and she was the only child present. And he is bashing her, saying she was abusive to him and that she was all these things, and it was getting under my skin. And so I thought, I got to find this guy. I don't trust him at all. I now don't believe his story. I think he's full of crap. And so what I did was, since they didn't give a name, I just took a screenshot of his face and I put it in an image search, like an image reverse image search engine, and immediately, without like the search engine didn't even hesitate, it immediately pulled up his offender report. So that's
Wow.
how that
Okay.
started. Yeah.
Well, that's
And
good
what was
to
also
know.
really
If
funny-
you ever think your neighbors are just
Yeah, just search their face.
his picture. I didn't know that you
Yeah.
could do that. Oh, wow. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
And what also was super funny about that, when I pulled up his report, in one of his mugshots, he was wearing the same exact shirt he was wearing in his interview with Nesper.
Really? Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that was fun.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, and Joe King. It's just making me think Tiger King, but some people were making jokes about the Tiger King the other day. So it's making me
Yeah,
think
some
of
people
that.
did say that it was just
Yeah.
as bad.
Yeah, yeah. Because like he has other charges too, like DV and other things too. Like the guy's not like I don't think he can stay clean long enough to try to get anything exonerated either.
Yeah,
so.
and not to mention his fail to register. If you're trying to appeal this thing that happened to you and make it right, why would you not comply completely with the law in the process?
Right. Yeah, because he had the fail to register like that was 2023 or something. I think I seen the report.
Yeah.
And then the original like sentencing though, that was like the 90s or something, wasn't it? It was
Yeah,
a while ago.
The charge, his initial charge was 1997 in Suffolk, Massachusetts.
Okay, and then he moved to Florida, and then he didn't register when he moved to Florida, from what I gathered. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, the good news is I highly doubt they're going to make another Conjuring movie because they did have to pay out Judith Penny for her allegations. They had to buy out her life story to get her to stop talking, and they had to pay out that author as well. Was it Ray Garden? I know there's two authors they had issues with.
Gerald Brittle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they had to
And
pay him
also
out as well.
Tony DeRosa Grund. He was part of the film crew of the first movie. He was part of that lawsuit, and it didn't come out till later. And he was actually the one encouraging Gerald Brittle and Judith Penny to do this lawsuit with him.
Oh wow, really?
I had found that article after the whole like big thing about Judith came out.
What was his whole thing about?
He wanted more money.
But he was just film crew?
I want to say he was director or something of that nature. He was kind of higher up in the production of the movie.
Okay.
But I don't think he was part of the second one. And I think it had something to do with him like trying to get more money out of the situation.
Oh, he was probably like frozen out of the second movie. Because I know it was Brittle who had a good like argument was that because he originally had a contract saying like they would have to pay him rights for anything made and stuff. And then they started arguing about what was real and what was not real and things like that. Right. And it's like always when paranormal people try to take someone to court, it never goes in your favor for the believer because you can't prove this stuff. So like, it's they're always going to go in favor. And that's why they settled because they knew that they were not going to win this,
Right. Yeah.
As well, Judith throwing her, tacking her story onto it, not good press. So I highly doubt that these production companies are going to want to deal with anything more Warrens or Nesper related. Like they did not want to deal with that, but they were already in the midst of everything. So
yeah, and they also had that oh so famous clause that they couldn't depict the Warrens in any act.
It was very specific that it was odd. Like everyone was saying, it was really odd that was in there. So yeah. Very strange, very strange. Have you found out anything? I gotta actually listen to the rest of your stuff because I haven't had a chance. You have like hours of stuff and I have been slowly working through it. But essentially from my initial research, what I found is like Lorraine was accused of burning her own hand underwater to like make it seem like a demon did it.
That was one of them. So it turns out there was multiple reasons they may have been sent away. When I was writing this episode, I was in communication with like my research team, which is a bunch of people that I've met along the way. It's not like an official team, but they're people that help, that have had experiences, that have connections, that can tell me things and help me out with like fact checking and stuff. And when I was writing that episode and I was really focused on that whole situation where Lorraine was accused of faking that burn by Marcia. Apparently Marcia told her parents, the Goodins, that she saw Lorraine do it, and that really turned the Goodins off of the Warrens and they didn't want them back. But I had someone close to the family send me a message through someone else and say that actually was not the reason. It is speculated as a reason, but only because like Bill Hall, the writer of the book, actually told me that he thinks that it may have been a situation where they were trying to get Marcia to say something and they kind of led her into saying that. That's what his opinion of it was. Because apparently the reasoning that the Warrens were sent away was because of the crowds. And it's not because they brought the crowds per se, but because the crowd kept getting bigger and the police were losing control. And they told Ed, we can't keep up with this. You guys cannot come back because we cannot maintain the control here and we cannot contain it with your presence. So you cannot come back. We will arrest you if you come back. So
yeah, because I did hear that. And then I heard that because I heard that the police essentially fired them, like wouldn't let them in. But then I heard, no, the family fired them first because they were caught faking stuff and the family was angry. Yeah. Plus also they used the phone, family's phone to call these people and racked up a huge bill.
Yeah, and apparently their lawyer even served in the bill.
They got them. Yeah, I think they had to sue them to get their money back from the bills, from what I understood. So yeah, it's very interesting because like I got to look into it some more. But like, what's your opinion on the case? Because the girl, she was First Nation, right?
Yes.
Aboriginal.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know, like I'm a skeptical believer, but when it comes to Aboriginals, like their stuff is so interesting to me and so like ingrained and they still practice it. Like it's like an ancient, practice that's carried down. And like, I don't know, I kind of believe there could be like earth spirits or something. And like that girl, she was in a bad spot. Like, could it have been something related to her heritage? Or was it like, we don't really understand poltergeist stuff. She was too young, though, I think, for that. She wasn't hitting puberty yet. But, like, what's your opinion on her altogether?
I'm actually really glad you asked that because in my research when I was writing this episode, I found no other mention of a possible correlation to her heritage and the haunting or the poltergeist, but in the book. So Bill Hall actually mentions in the book there is a situation where so Marcia did have one friend that she hung out with a little bit. It was actually a daughter of friends of the Goodins. So the Goodins friends would come over and they would bring their daughter Rosemary. And over time they kind of got to know each other and became like a little friendship unit. It wasn't talked about as much as you would think they were like best friends or anything, but Rosemary had experiences with Marcia, and she actually gave one of those experiences to Bill. And one of those was that she caught Marcia rocking back and forth and kind of chanting in a language she didn't understand. So she asked her about it.
Really?
And Marcia told her that she was communicating with her grandfather. And the way that it made it sound was that he was still alive. Because like I know Indigenous people have spiritual practices when they communicate with deceased loved ones and like, that kind of thing. So for me to like the way I understood it, he was still alive and she was communicating with him that like some kind of like telepathy or something is the way it made it sound.
Okay.
So that triggered an idea in me that maybe she was aware somehow of her spirituality and the power it holds within Indigenous peoples. And so I thought maybe she was somehow helping it along, causing it, igniting it, anything like that. Because you're right, she was only 9. So she wasn't quite, she was just on the verge of hitting puberty, depending on how her body was working. But it had
not that poltergeist is like a proven like science. Right. So like we don't really know.
It's such a common trope, for it to be a puberty-ridden teenager.
But like, because like in Canada here, we have a lot of First Nation Aboriginals, and like I go to the powwows, and there's like little 5-year-olds out there dancing, and they're doing the proper dance. So like they're taught this stuff at a young age. They know their heritage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it made me think of that, and then also that to tie into that idea. The Goodins actually say stuff started when they brought her home. They just didn't put it together until later. They said every year around November when the big incident happened in 74, they said starting in 68, every year around November, they'd hear banging. They'd have weird things happen that they kind of just chalked up to like the time of year and being extra aware of like ghostly things because it's Halloween. And they also thought their neighbors were pranking them because it was Halloween time. So they didn't put it together till later. So that made me wonder, was she so active in her spiritual connection with her family that she was taken from? Because apparently they didn't want her to go. There's a bunch of controversy over her family
Yeah, the
not wanting
tribe.
her. Yeah.
Yeah, the tribe was angry because it was
Mhm.
her parents were like, I think, or something. I
Mhm.
think I might
Yep.
be misremembering,
Yeah,
but
apparently she
yeah,
suffered a
like
little bit of abuse and stuff, and that's why she was put up for
yeah.
adoption.
And so what normally happens is normally the tribe will take her on, like the
Right.
tribe council, and they'll find a new home for her. But I think there's like different laws in the states. Like in Canada, we had those like right away. Like the tribe would handle it, and if they can't handle it, the leaders, the elders would come like seek someone else out, right?
Yeah, and that makes
Um,
sense because it keeps
yeah.
them in their family.
Yeah, even if it just keeps them in the community. Like that's all they
Yeah.
want is make
And their
sure that they grow up
culture
in the
and the way they
community.
were already being
Exactly.
raised. Yeah.
Just an FYI, I didn't learn about the 60s scoop until I started doing more research into Marcia's background. So I'm discussing this with Stevi before I did that research. I knew about the horrible schools and stuff in Canada, but I didn't realize the 60s scoop, like what it was and the breadth of it, and that it was like all connected, and it's absolutely horrible. Yeah. And that's what kind of thought me on this thought process with that story to begin with, was because like I know that the tribe would have rather her stayed, and I know that they're very spiritual people, but she was really young when she went. So like, I don't know, but it's interesting because like I'm a skeptical believer, but like when it comes to that stuff, I find it interesting. And you know, I've had experiences too because I grew up around it as well. So it's kind of like it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know, I kind of get more sucked in, I think, a little bit with their mythology than others. So
Yeah, no, I agree. It feels a little more concrete versus ghost stories.
yeah, exactly. Like I don't believe in like ghosts really, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas like voodoo explains it really well, where they're like communing with their spirits of their ancestors who have passed on, and they're
Mhm.
calling them down here to enter their body to help them with something. So like
Yeah.
the spirit is gone, it's doing its thing, it's living its afterlife, whatever, and they ask it to come down and enter their body to be able to talk to people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, that makes more sense. If a medium was doing that, I think I'm like, that would make more sense than going like trying to sound out the name of the person with
Yeah.
letters and like the whole way that these fake mediums are. I'm just like, oh my God, it's so ridiculous because they're just following
Yeah.
the spiritualist movement from the Victorian era. That's totally fake, right?
I agree. Yeah.
I don't know what her tribe was like, what kind of practices they had for things like that. So that's the thing I was going to look into a little bit to see what particular tribe she came from and what practices and stuff. They
Oh
were
yeah,
following.
that would be really cool. So
Mhm.
when I was writing the episode, I actually had listened to a couple different podcasts and things on it, and there was some controversy over what tribe she came from, and some were saying Iroquois, but the consensus is Seneca. That's what Bill put in the book, and most people agree that it was Seneca.
Oh, okay. Then I'll look into that and see if I can go down a little bit of a path and figure out which one she was with.
That would be so cool. I would really
Yeah.
love that because I think I'm the only
Yeah.
person other than you now bringing it up to me to even think of that because it really stuck out to me because she also told Rosemary that her grandpa was angry that she was taken. So that would,
They would be,
confirm
yeah.
that they were not happy.
Yeah, because like if her grandpa was alive, or he could have like normally, yeah, he would. The tribe would give her to relatives, right?
Yeah.
And then if there are no relatives, the elders themselves would take on a kid if they need to, right?
Yeah,
to
it's like
make
a
sure that
village.
they
It's
don't
not
leave.
about one family.
It is. Exactly. So that's what I found interesting about this case, because I'm like, it's weird that they even got her in the first place, right?
Yeah.
But I know like even some of the different tribes, I have to check my notes. I feel like Iroquois was actually made up of like it's multiple tribes. Like some of them names that we know now were actually multiple tribes that joined together in an alliance when the
Okay.
white people came. So
Mhm.
like some of them are actually offshoot tribes, which then
That would
joined
make
together, and this is the name that we know now. So it's interesting to go back and figure out like, well, what's the original, right? Because
Yeah,
some of
for
them
sure.
like believe in different things depending if you're East Coast, West, North, South. Like they have different belief systems too, and
Right.
I find it very interesting.
Same. Yeah.
If you find that stuff interesting, I'll just mention it. There's a YouTuber, his name is Shanclan Productions, and he talks like he goes out and fights like spirits. Like they're not human, they're like different dark spirits and earth
Got
spirits.
it.
And he goes and helps with hauntings, and he's Aboriginal, right? Grew up with it all. His stuff is really fascinating, and his stories.
That sounds really
and,
cool.
He describes the spirits, the things that he sees, and I'm like, I don't even know where you got that from. That's got to be passed down, right?
Right? Yeah, because that's not picked off as some trope.
It's so creepy, the descriptions. So it's just Ed wasn't good at selling their image. That was Lorraine's job. And she was good at manipulating people, right? And just Ed never learned how to do it. And Tony never learned how to do it properly. John is really good at it. I think John paid attention to Lorraine. John's
I also think Ed had an anger problem, which
he did.
If you noticed, as they progressed in interviews and appearances, he was there less and less because he was so volatile, is what I think.
Really? Because I found later interviews, he wasn't letting Lorraine talk anymore. She would just stay quiet. Yeah. So
okay,
I mean,
that's really interesting that you say that, because I've not seen. I would love to see those. Oh, I guess I wouldn't say so. It was more around the 80s, 90s. Because the Snedeker one comes to mind, where he was on Sally Jesse Raphael.
He was so volatile with that one.
Yeah,
he was crazy with that one.
After that, he kind of was less involved in the appearances on stuff.
I don't know, because when I seen him when the Conjuring movies started, yeah, definitely he disappeared. But before their Conjuring movie,
wasn't he having heart conditions then? A heart condition issue.
Yeah, but it kind of did seem like she was doing all the publicity, and she's better at it anyway. But before the Conjuring movie contract, she was doing talks and interviews and Ed and her together, and I just noticed she was giving up on trying to talk. It's really interesting, because I would love to do a video on this, but it's going to be theory crafting, and I could get sued, so I haven't done a video.
Did you happen to hear in my very first episode, I covered this, and it was such an obscure thing, I almost didn't put it in, but it kept popping up in my search. But Ed was accused of assault, a really severe assault, when he was 17 years old, right before he was sent off to active duty. Yeah, and a lot of people speculate that the reason he was sent off to active duty was because of that crime he committed. He assaulted somebody, and he hit them in the head, and it took a bunch of staples to close up their head, and he also robbed them.
Oh, wow. Really? Oh, I hadn't heard of that one. No. See, that's interesting.
And the reason I didn't register it right away was because it's listed under his name, Warren Miney.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah, because he definitely has anger issues. He's definitely a narcissist. Also, she really liked that money. And she also didn't become psychic until they started getting a bit of fame. She wasn't actually psychic growing up. She didn't believe in that stuff. She was the religious one. Ed's not religious at all.
Yeah, I was actually, I started a little Tea Time Tuesday segment for my Patreon and my subscribers, and I'm reading newspapers from, I went back as far as I could find.
Newspaper one.
So I learned that Lorraine was not actively, quote unquote, a psychic until the late 70s, because Ed was working with different people that called themselves light trance mediums, and he was learning from them and going on these seances and these investigations. And I personally believe he learned all that stuff and then pushed it on Lorraine and told her, hey, this would be better if we worked as a team.
So what's funny is I found articles about Smurl case. So the Smurl case is one of their very earliest cases, right? So I found articles where it said that Ed and Lorraine were there with their psychic, but they didn't name the psychic. And I'm like, I think that that's what happened. They're Lorraine was learning what to do, and they brought along a psychic a few times, and then they got rid of that psychic pretty quick once the press started showing up. It was what ended up happening is the psychic sensed all these things, and then Lorraine's oh, I sensed the same thing, and they're two psychics have confirmed, and they're but they were in the room together, and Lorraine was just copying her, right? And so definitely they were learning how to do the psychic thing from psychics, right? And Ed's I'll put you in that role because you're empathetic, which she was an empathetic person, and you're good at being caring and all that, but she talked people into those contracts eventually. She was very slimy too.
Ed himself even said that she could talk anyone into anything. He called it her Irish charm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I did read that. Yeah. So together they were just a force. Yeah,
I think they put it together that them as a duo doing it was going to be what they needed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Because Ed was like trying to do paranormal stuff and he would paint the pictures, but like he'd
Yep.
always get her to knock on the door
Yep.
because like he knew that
She
he
could
came
talk.
across abrasive. Yeah.
Yep.
He was well aware that he came across abrasive because he would stick her in front of the people any chance he could get, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and she was very good at being sneaky with people.
Yeah, I agree.
But we'll see what the new Conjuring movie, which case it's going to be about, because I'm kind of curious.
I think it'll be the Smurl. I'm pretty sure it will be. That's my guess, my assumption.
I think that it might be the Smurls, but the only reason why I'm not sure is because the Smurls didn't get them in a good contract. They didn't get their life story rights fully.
Yeah.
So if it's the Smurls, any surviving relatives, they have to pay them something.
Well,
Yeah.
So this is what happened with The Conjuring, the first one with the Perrin family. When I did a deep dive on that, I learned that for 14 years they tried to make that movie and could not get the family to sign off on it in a way that they agreed to like the terms and stuff. So what they did, because
Warren and Lorraine, they fired them, right? So they never got a contract signed with them.
Right. So what they did was to skirt around paying them is they changed the perspective of the story. So it's not the parents' perspective, it's the Warrens' perspective. So then they can say whatever they want because it's their experience. So that's why I think it'll be the Smurl, because they'll just do that again. It'll be what they saw, what they wrote down, what they experienced, regardless of what the family said, and experienced. Yeah, and then you'll have another situation like Andrea Perrin coming forward and being like, no, this is what really happened. You know, that kind of thing where she's selling her books now and stuff.
Question. I've heard from other debunkers, a bunch of the YouTube ones, is that Andrea Perrin's story keeps changing. Have you read all of her books?
Yes.
Has her story changed?
Yes. So it's very frustrating because the details of like certain haunting aspects have not really changed. Like she still claims certain ghosts, certain spirits, certain things like that. She does add additions here and there, but the main thing that drives me insane is now, and she doesn't always say this. It depends on who her audience is. She says it on her show, and then she says it on shows where she knows it's okay to. But her thing now is that she had this epiphany, and she remembered how she was 12 years old, standing on the property of the farm for the first time, and she looks up at the sky and sees the clouds and has this sudden realization that they are not clouds, they are spaceships. And all of this is alien related now.
Oh, God.
And then she'll go real deep into it. She came real close to doing it with me. She made a comment about terrestrial beings or something like that. And then she said something about that's a whole other thing. And I was like, yeah, I know about that. And I'd love to talk about that. But I didn't want it in that episode because people would get confused. And I was trying to keep the story of the parents concise and understood. And if I start throwing in her ideas about aliens, first of all, there goes her credibility. Second of all, everyone is confused now. So I intended to do another part to that, but I already have a part 2 written that is in another direction with a writer and someone who's done a lot of work on the history of the farm and stuff. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to do an episode where I address her now telling everyone she encounters that it's aliens. And she also hosts these events where she goes and calls the aliens and she sings to them. And she says that they like her singing and they always come for her.
Wow. Okay.
It's kind of unhinged.
Because like I haven't done the Conjuring house yet because the current owner is unhinged. And I'm like, I just didn't want to touch that.
I understand. People kept asking me to cover it. And I was like, there's nothing to cover that everyone else isn't already. I'm not touching that.
I'm not touching her. No. I'm wondering if conspiracy theory time. This is where I guess these are my conspiracy theories, right? Andrea's lost it, you know, and Jacqueline, she's lost it. What if there's something in that house that if you try to make money off of it?
Yes. Yeah. Somebody said when Jacqueline was being so unhinged and posting all that stuff, this guy came forward who apparently worked and lived in the house when she under her, I think, or maybe before her. I can't remember. But anyways, he said that the house does that to you. He was confirming that her behavior was a result of being in the house too much. And he was saying the same thing happened to him. So I think that's interesting that you brought that up. I'll have to find that
Yeah.
link because if someone sent it to me, I'll find it and I'll send it to you. But he did like this whole video where he talked about it, I think. It was either on Facebook or YouTube. But yeah, he was basically defending Jacqueline's behavior, saying it wasn't her fault. It was the house. So I thought that was really interesting.
Send it to me because I mean, even this whole time I've been saying like I think it's the house because Jacqueline had a head on her shoulders when she bought the place. She was normal and she already had a ton of money. Like she's made a ton of money in her life on business that she's run. And you don't get that, like you aren't able to make that much money and be that successful if you're this like crazy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Either something snapped or something caused it. It's really funny because like, first of all, the amount of things you can link together because not only is like it kind of crazy that Andrea is now saying it's aliens, and then you have the behavior of Jacqueline, and then other people saying the house affected them. Like there are other people out there that think that alien technology is actually responsible for apparitions or ghostly encounters and stuff. Like so it's so like convoluted and messy.
Yeah, I could see like people thinking it's aliens. In my opinion, what I think hauntings and everything are is okay, time is not linear.
Yeah,
People don't
They've
understand
already proven that. Yeah.
And like, yeah, it is proven, but majority of people don't get it. Like, so like I believe what we're seeing with hauntings is just a like glimpse into the past. Like it's like a fluctuation and we're like seeing the past for a minute. Right?
Yeah, I've heard it explained as accidental overlaps of timelines.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of it is. Also, what else I believe it could be is like certain areas, like we can imprint things on an area, just our energy, if there's enough like, horrible things that happen.
The trauma of it.
Yeah, and I think that like just humankind can like haunt an area for life if something horrible happened there.
Yeah.
And I just kind of think like it's like a scar on the earth. It's like the earth is made like a copy of it and they're playing it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's playing it back just over and over again. Right. And that's what I think hauntings are those two things. Now, what's interesting, what's kind of cool, and this is where like, okay, the CIA project was a total farce, but I was going to do a video on like just talking about, this was fun to think about, is that astral projection, the CIA project was saying they were using it to remote view. But also they were proving because time's not linear, you could astral project into different timelines.
Yeah, that guy was saying back to like dinosaurs and Jesus and stuff.
Yeah. So like what's to say a ghost isn't a person astral projecting, right?
Right. Andrea mentions that in her books, actually. There's a section in one of the books that she talks about how she had a moment when she was standing in her house that she looked across the room and saw herself older, like much, much, much older. And she said she instantly recognized it of herself as herself, but she also recognized that it was a different timeline.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and that's
as batty
like,
as she is, some of that stuff she says is like, wow.
I do believe in the time overlapping thing. I do believe in leaving scars. The astral projection, I don't believe in because like it's been proven that that whole experiment and everything since has been self-induced hallucinations that because you want to believe that it's going to be a spirit or this or that, you actually have that hallucination because it's always believers that they have as their test subjects. They don't have skeptics for their test subjects. Yeah. So like, and they do things that bring on hallucinations essentially. Yeah. So, cause you can make your brain hallucinate.
Right.
Very easily. Yeah. So it's like, I believe that all those projects, they're just not proven scientifically, but I think that like physics or something somehow, or like quantum, something's happening on like a quantum level. And I think that's probably going to prove that all these hauntings or whatever are not actually hauntings. And they're just like a time overlap or a jump or a hiccup, right?
Well, I have something
and eventually, I think we'll get there. But the science isn't there yet.
I just thought of something that you might find beneficial to your episode. I did not know this because, so when I did my Lindley Street episode, I had a little bit of a bias against Paul Eno, the priest that the Warrens brought. Some of his testimony just was so far-fetched to me that I had a hard time just even believing anything he said. But if you talk to Bill Hall thinks Paul Eno's, I guess not in the present time of the investigation, but later when Paul investigated more and went down every rabbit hole he could and he was really trying to figure it out, apparently he came to the conclusion that it was an overlapping of timelines situation.
That's interesting. I wonder
Yeah,
what
and I
year
didn't know
he-
that, but
he
Bill
said
told me that.
Oh, let me know if you find like a link or anything to that. I'm curious
I'll
what
ask
year.
Bill. I think he might have it.
Okay, yeah, if he knows what year that is, because I'm curious about which physics and different like time experiments were proven at that point. Because like
Yeah.
some of the stuff that we're talking about is newer too, right?
Yeah,
So like,
and I think there was a YouTube video that Paul Eno did later, like the 80s or 90s, where he discussed it and his new theories. And someone sent me that, but I didn't watch it because, like I said, I didn't like his of the time. Like I didn't know he had
Yeah.
changed stuff over time. I didn't like where his mind was when it was happening, so I didn't really acknowledge him a lot. But when Bill told me
Mhm.
that, I was like, well, damn, that's a lot more than I knew.
yeah, let me know and let me know if you find the video too. Just send me anything if you think of it or find it. Because yeah, it's curious. But that's another priest though that I want to investigate because I'm actually going through and investigating every priest that the Warrens have quoted
Oh, I
as
love
being
that.
with them at some point.
Yeah, they changed their names a lot too.
They do. Some of them though I have found, like the one that was convicted, although not convicted. Sorry, he was charged, went to
Accused, yeah.
court, accused, and he wasn't convicted. That was the priest's exact name in the Annabelle thing. And
Yeah,
so I'm
that's
like,
right.
I don't know why they didn't change his name. Because even like back then, people were like aware that this guy he was doing it in like New York and Buffalo, along, because he's from Canada. So there's like Nova Scotia, like it was
Yeah.
doing it all along the East Coast because he was like placed in different spots. And the year of the car accident, supposedly like almost deadly car accident, he wasn't living anywhere for that 1 year, like nowhere. And his residences are listed everywhere at the church, right? So like, what if he was in the hospital and in rehab for a year to walk again and do all that? Like the time actually, like the timeline matches, the name matches this guy and his path. Like he was all across the East Coast, the Upper East Coast, right? So I'm like, that all matches. And then I had people in the comments telling me that they remember growing up and in their little town, there was like posters up saying, have you ever been hurt by this priest? The same guy's name. If you have, please call this law firm. They were trying to gather as many stories as they could because they were trying to charge him.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, that's crazy. Like, yeah, and there was apparently like a bunch of people, but then they didn't come forward and stuff too. So it's crazy. So I'm like,
yeah,
it's so crazy. I'm just like, I want to like try to investigate more of these priests as best as I can. So, well, then we'll do like a bit of an outro. So, I guess I guess you already plugged. I don't know. You guys go and follow Stevi's stuff, Truth or Demons podcast. Go check out her Spotify as well. I know I told you guys before, but she's got some episodes on Spotify that she doesn't have on YouTube. So like, if you want to go listen to the stuff on Spotify, you're going to find more stuff that is not on YouTube. So there's more content there for you guys. But yeah, Truth or Demons podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Go check her out. Everyone go give her a follow, please, as well. And you can check out her whole investigation on Lindley Street and everything with Nesper and all that stuff too. So she's got some really good interviews and stuff that she has done as well.
Thank you.
But yeah, so I just want to say like, thank you for joining me today. Cause yeah, I might have some other questions that pop up as I'm like working on the detailed research. Cause I do like a high level research. So I do a detailed research. So as I do the detailed one, I might have like a question or two that pop up that I'll ask you about that might show up. So.
Perfect. That sounds great to me. And I'm so excited you had me on. I had so much fun. I could talk about this stuff for hours and hours.
Yeah, and then we're going to have Stevi join us as well for some of our fireside chat stuff. It's a new show that we're slowly developing, getting a bit of used to what it's going to look like. So, yeah.
I'm super excited. I can't wait.
But yeah, so thanks for coming out today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I had the best time.
So today, the story of Lindley Street poltergeist still remains a part of local lore and continues to be studied by paranormal researchers and folklorists. While skeptics continue to debate the true nature of the phenomena, we're never going to truly know the answers to this case. There's just too many things that are unknown and misinformation that's out there. For those who study the paranormal, the events on Lindley Street serve as a reminder that sometimes the line between natural and supernatural can blur. It is important, however, to remember that the factual account of the Lindley Street poltergeist is rooted in the lived experiences of the family and onlooker witnesses. And we should always remember to not take witness accounts as definitive proof of anything. As for what I think, I do find this one a little bit interesting because there's a lot of witness testimony, but then I don't really take witness testimony seriously, but it's an interesting case. I don't think I believe it's true, but if it actually was something, I personally would be more inclined to believe that it's rooted in something from Marcia's heritage. Maybe her ancestors were angered, or maybe they're trying to get her back home. Maybe there was something going on with her grandfather. There are stories about that with that she was talking to her grandfather who was still alive. We don't know. But also, I'm just going to make a special mention. Go check out the Tape Libraries video. He dug up some stories from a parapsychologist who had investigated the story after the fact. As well, he goes into detail on the reported events, which I know some of you guys like hearing more details on the events. It is entertaining. It's a good retelling add-on to all this, so go check it out. I noticed in Tape Library, he said that Laura Gooden, the mother, is a First Nation as well. And I spoke with Stevi and she said that she may be partially, but she was going to maybe half, but she was going to look into it. But I'll let you know once I get some clarity on it if I do. In the meantime, tell me, what do you think of this story? Do you think that this could be true? Or is there anything else that you found interesting that you know about this story that I didn't cover? Go ahead and throw it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you all. As well, if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It does help with the algorithm and everything too. Also, I want to thank all my members and patrons and supporters. It really does help out quite a lot, and I really do appreciate all the extra support that you're giving to me and the channel. And, let's grow from here. Don't worry about what to watch next because I have linked a video, or if you want to sit and watch things for a little bit longer, a whole playlist on the side here. Go ahead and click those now to keep watching.